Good. Okay, so welcome to another interview with a graduate of our training, Trauma-informed Yoga and Embodied Resilience teacher training and mentoring course. And today, my name is Aneta Idczak, if you don't know me. And today I have got a pleasure of speaking with Anna Kerry. And Anna Kerry is one of the graduates, and she is also a yoga teacher, a stroke survivor, and a teacher who specializes in supporting others to recover from stroke and regain and embrace their life and their health after the stroke. So welcome so much, Anna. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today.
Thank you for having me. It was nice to speak to you again.
Thank you. So Anna, let's start with your own journey. I know a little bit about your journey, and I find it really inspirational and a really great example of how powerful yoga practices can be in our life. So would you share your journey with us? Your own personal journey, please.
Okay, yeah. So I qualified to teach yoga during the middle of the pandemic, which obviously was challenging. But I qualified in August 2020, and so I just went out there and started teaching, and I was loving it. I did a couple of classes a week because I still work full time. And yeah, I was really loving it. And then in March 2021, one morning I got up and felt okay, and then the next minute my life changed and I had a stroke. And at the age of 35, I was thinking, what on earth is happening? Because at that point I had no idea that strokes happen to young people. I presented with all of the classic symptoms of a stroke. My stroke was in the right side of my brain, so my left side was affected. So I couldn't use my left side, my left arm, my left leg, my face drooped, I couldn't talk properly. So really I presented with all of the symptoms that, on those adverts that you see on TV that we have, presented with all of those symptoms. And I'm just thinking in my head, this can't be right, because I again thinking that young people don't have strokes. My husband was luckily with me at the time. He acted so fast and called 999, and obviously they asked me to do different things, like, can you bring both arms up? And obviously I couldn't. It's a really weird feeling, because you see part of your body and you're looking down at it and you're willing it to move. In your head you're like, no, this should move, and it doesn't, and it's terrifying.
Yeah, that sounds really even just listening to you describing
it really is terrifying. And yeah, so I suppose the worst thing is that you're kind of stuck inside yourself and you're just panicking. And I'm just going to try and close my blinds. 1 second. There we go. And so yeah, you're kind of just panicking. And it was actually my husband that said to me, because I was in the bedroom at the time, and he'd laid me down on the bed while we were waiting for the ambulance. And obviously he could see how I was reacting to it. And he just said to me, use your yoga breathing. And in that second, my experience changed. And that's so powerful, because as soon as I started to deepen the inhalations and lengthen my exhalations and started doing just deep breathing, it really calmed me down. Yes, there's obviously still a lot of anxiety going on and panic going on, but I could feel it in my body. I could feel the release. And yeah, if, like, I say this to all of the stroke survivors that I speak to about your breath and how powerful it can be, I've talked about this a lot in that moment, how much it just switched for me and how the experience changed because of that. So yeah, it was terrifying. And obviously I went to the hospital with, you know, even the doctors at the hospital were like, oh, we think you've had a migraine. And I'm like, wow, this is a bad migraine if it is. And I think I was kind of lulled into a false sense of security there, because I was like, oh, the doctors think it's a migraine, so that's okay. And then later on in the day, when they come and tell you that you've had a stroke and you're on your own in the hospital because your husband can't come with you because of the pandemic, it's a lot to deal with when you're on your own as well. So it was a lot of processing, a lot of tears. And what I've learned since then is that's okay. That, you know, you're going through this thing and it's okay to cry, to be angry, you know, all of these feelings and things that come up, that's okay. You know, we need to just let that be, sit with it, and, you know, see what we can learn from that. So yeah, after I came out of hospital, I reached out to my yoga teacher friends and asked if anyone knew of any trauma informed yoga things that I could kind of look at. Someone mentioned our anatomy teacher had done some training in trauma, so I spoke to him and he got me kind of moving again with my body, and because I just felt really unsafe in myself. I felt like I couldn't trust my body, because it was kind of like, well, my body's done this thing to me, and it was kind of, yeah, that I felt like I was really unsafe within myself. So yeah, once I started moving again, because I felt like I couldn't really sit with meditation and my thoughts, it was just a bit too difficult at that point. So moving really helped me to use my practice as a moving meditation instead. So that really gained my confidence back within myself. And then from there, I obviously had sick leave, which I didn't really know what to do with myself other than my physio exercises. So I did a lot of research and looking around for trauma things to learn. And that's when I came across your CPD with trauma. And I listened to that and I just thought, wow. It was proper mind opening for me. I was like, this is amazing. Like, to think the way you were explaining it just in those few hours, I was like, that just makes so much sense. The way you were explaining what trauma is and everything around it, and I was like, okay, I need to know more about this. And so that's why I decided to do your training. And yeah, that it's doing that training, it's just it helps me trauma.
So let's just
Okay,
pause
sorry.
there for a second. We come back to it in a moment, and I'm really happy that, you know, that the training helped you process your trauma, because it sounds like it's such a big thing for anybody to happen. And as you said, I mean, there is so many different things that stood out in what you said, like, you know, not knowing that stroke can happen to you at such early age, then the kind of classical things that were happening to you, and then the kind of feedback once you went to the hospital that, oh no, it's just migraine, and but then being told, well, you did have a stroke, and potentially how, well, it is completely life-changing. And, you know, it sounds like you were in a really good place in such a difficult situation, that you did have some skills that maybe, you know, made a huge difference in the later recovery, and how, you know, how your body processed and dealt with the stroke. This is such an important stuff, and I think, you know, I didn't know that stroke, when I think about stroke, just like most people, it happens in the older age, and once it happens, the recovery is very limited. And, you know, your story is showing something slightly different, that it can happen at any age, and that there can be recovery.
Yeah.
And something that you said here that really, really stood out for me is this thing about, I felt I couldn't trust my body.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful, statement and powerful way of being. It's like, if you can't trust your body, which is the definition of trauma, really. I can't trust my body because my body did this to me, and now I don't know where I am with it. And it's really, you were talking about feeling unsafe, about about being in that space of not knowing. And
I look back at myself now, and like now where I am now, and I look back and I just want to give myself a hug, because I just see how vulnerable I was, and how vulnerable I felt. Even the way that I was holding myself, and even the way that I walked, and I was just, everything was just really, I feel like unsteady. I felt unsteady with everything. And it's a really, it's not a nice place to be.
no.
And it's kind of, it is hard. And it has been a process, and it's still a process. I still have days, the one thing that comes with stroke, and a lot of people say this, is health anxiety. As soon as my body was so heightened, and obviously it's in that fight or flight mode, it's so heightened to anything that was happening within my body. So any small feeling, it would jump on that, and it would make me panic that I was having another stroke or something else was wrong. Because I'd be like, my brain's thinking, well, I've had a stroke at 35, so why can't I have a heart attack, or why can't I have this or that, or anything like that. So it's retraining your brain as well, to jump on everything.
And I can imagine that if you didn't do something about this, it could just grow more and more into something that would really take over your life. So not only the kind of health challenges, physical health challenges, but also the mental health challenges that come with it.
I think that's the thing. That's obviously, a lot of people see the physical side of having a stroke, and the physical disabilities that people can have after having a stroke. And I've been lucky. I have been really lucky with my recovery, and I've got the use of everything back. Some people aren't as lucky, and everyone, you see that. But what a lot of us stroke survivors speak about is the hidden side of stroke that people don't necessarily see or speak about, and that's the psychological effects.
Yes.
And I was partaking in a study earlier this year, where a girl from Manchester University, I think it was looking into the psychological impacts of stroke on young people specifically, because there's not enough stuff out there for young people. And especially like and it's like that, like obviously when I went to the hospital, and they're just, even doctors just say, oh, we think it's a migraine because of your age. You don't fit into the category of having a stroke. And that's not right. I mean, I can't fault the hospital that I was at. They were amazing. They were great. Really, really great care. But that, being told that, and that's when I presented with the symptoms that are like classic for a stroke. A lot of young people don't present with those symptoms, and people just pass it off. And so there's not enough out there about young people having stroke, so there definitely needs to be more work there.
And I love it that through your own experience, you have become one of the voices to actually talk about it, and bringing yoga into it. And we know from our training and for our own experience and practice of yoga, and when I say yoga, I don't just mean yoga asana, the postures. I'm talking the holistic yoga that comes with the certain approach, with yamas and niyamas, and with the breath work, and with the meditation and somatic movement that comes with it, not just the poses. That there is no separation between physical and mental. I mean, it's like this is a really good example. If you had a stroke, it will impact your mental health, because you'll be worried about the state of your health and what could happen. Anybody living with long-term chronic pain, you know, can tell you that actually their mental health is greatly impacted by it. And the same the other way around, with the mental health, you know, impacting the physical health as well. Because we store the stress, we store anxiety, we store everything within our body. You know, it's enough to look, and you said that yourself, how you were holding yourself. You know, it's enough to look at somebody without them saying a single word, and you know, if you pay attention, you know what they're feeling, and you can guess what the thoughts might be that are going through their mind. But you definitely get the sense of what they're experiencing, whether they feel hopeless or helpless, whether they feel scared, whether they feel unsafe, whether they feel anxious, you know, whether they're grieving, or whether they feel angry. All of that, you know, we express not just through the language, that's a small portion of it, but actually through our body, through how we hold ourselves, through the facial expressions, and through the breath as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, I think back now, and like when I say I look at myself back then, and I can see what I was like, and I think anyone that looked at me that knows about trauma and is trained in that type of thing would look at me straight away and would know that something was off.
Yeah, I mean, this is I mean, this is something that we cover in the training. One of the modules, you know, as you remember, we look at what do we need to pay attention to understand what's going on for our students, for our clients, to understand when somebody's got triggered, to understand what's needed, how can we meet them in a place where they are at. So that brings us to, you know, the training. And I wonder, you know, what kind of impact the training had on the way that you teach and on you.
It's had a massive impact on the way that I teach and on myself. So for the way that I teach, I was always very lucky with the school that I trained at. They were always very much put the emphasis on how the postures feel on your body, not particularly how they look. That was always the emphasis from when I trained, which was great. But I think doing your training as well kind of built on that. And so my teaching, I think back now to when I first started teaching to how I teach now, and I think a lot of it now is very much more about the language that I use. Is very different. I'm inviting people, I'm allowing people this time, this space. So allow yourself is something that I use a lot in my class. So allow yourself this time and space to feel your body, to check in with yourself. And I think that's been the main difference between my teaching, is the language that I use. And then for myself, I mean, it's the training is just, it helped me so much through my recovery, because I was still going through my recovery process when I did your training. So it helped me understand my own trauma, but then also how I could apply that to help other people as well. So for me, it's been life-changing. And it really has.
Lovely. So if I ask you, there might be more than one thing. I mean, hearing life-changing is really, you know, it sounds really wonderful, and I'm very grateful that it helped, not just on the level of your work, but also on personal level. If there was one thing that really stood out for you, I mean, you already mentioned the language and allow yourself, but apart from that, if there was another thing that stood out for you from the training that really made a huge difference?
There's a couple of things, but I suppose the one thing that I use constantly and that I always tell people about is checking in and focusing practice. And those things that about checking in with yourself, and the fact that you said that to us, that's not negotiable. Those things, that checking in with yourself is non-negotiable. That's what you do. this is how you need to do this for yourself, because you've got to do these practices yourself. And so starting checking in with myself. And I remember at the time when we were going through it, and I remember having a real like moment with my day job, and it was a bit stressful, and I was like, no, take a step back. I always bring a hand to my heart. It always comforting. It's quite nice for me. That's my little thing. And just check in with myself. And so yeah, that and a focusing practice. And I remember you talking about the focusing practice, and I'd never done one before your training, so I'd never tried focusing like this. And I remember you saying that you've got to just do it so that you kind of understand. You can talk about it and how it works and everything like that. And I was just thinking, acknowledging your feelings and like saying hello to them, and I'm like, how is this gonna, like, and I was just like, sometimes I'm really like practical, and I'm just like, no, I don't know how this is gonna work. And obviously I tried it, and it's the most amazing thing, because it really does give you space, because it's by acknowledging them, they just quiet down a little bit. It's like a small child, isn't it? They just want to be heard. And by hearing them and then actually offering myself a bit of kindness and compassion and being like, this is okay to be feeling this, then yeah, it is one of the things that I put into my program with stroke survivors, is checking in and focusing, because I think it's so important to be able to, like, when you had a stroke, there is so many different thoughts and feelings and emotions going on, and you feel it, obviously, all of those things in your body. And that's what I try to explain to my students, is when you feel anxious or anything like that, it's always felt in your body. And so doing this focusing practice can help just to give that space in your body. And I think for me, that was one of the things that we learned that was amazing. I could go on. There's lots of other things that I really loved about the training. I really like about the resilience and how we look at resilience, because I always thought of myself as being really resilient. But then actually, when you think about resilience as maybe just being able to move from one state to the other in your nervous system, so moving from the fight or flight back to the rest or digest, and just not getting stuck in those places, then yeah, that for me as well was a real eye-opener, looking at resilience in that way. So yeah, there's, like I say, I could go on.
Lovely, that's really great. So thank you so much for sharing your journey and sharing your learning, and it's really lovely. I think it's very inspirational, and for anybody who has experienced something like stroke, this, knowing that there are practices that can really help in recovery, that can help to change your relationship with your body. And that is actually shared by somebody who has experienced it themselves. So I know that you have created a course for stroke survivors.
Yes.
That is launching, well, it's in the launching now, and it's starting very soon. So I'd like you to say a few words about that, and also, where people can find the information about it.
Yeah, so yes, I created a program. I'd skirted around the idea, but I'd created some different things, and then I thought, I just really want to be able to help people that's been in the same situation as me, or a similar situation to me, because everyone's stroke is different. But we all have some common themes that run through our strokes. And so yeah, I really wanted to create a program that helps people to feel safe within their body again, to have more confidence within their body, and to be able to move forward with life. And I know, like I've said before, I've been really lucky with my recovery and my movement and everything. But even if you've got limited mobility, you can still benefit from yoga. So, you know, in my program that I do, there is chair practices. There is other movement videos as well that you can do, which are standing and seated and, you know, different things, but it is accessible for people. And I think people don't necessarily associate yoga with being accessible because of everything that you see on the internet and in magazines and stuff. But that's not my type of yoga at all. And so I think it is accessible for people. And what I do in the program is to guide people in these practices that the thing that I say to them, these are all things that I've done in my own recovery. These are all practices that I use myself, and that have helped me through my recovery. And I think when people realise and understand that I'm a survivor myself, I think that helps them connect to me. And because they know that I understand, even though, like I say, everyone's stroke is different, there's those common themes that run between all of us. And so, yeah, I think people resonate with the fact that I've been through it and I know how it feels, and I think that's really important for them. So yeah, I'm really excited to be launching the program, and it does. Yeah, so the first week of the program starts next week. So yeah, I'm really excited to be getting started on it. And they can, if anyone wants to know anything about it, you can find it on my website, which is Theikos Yoga. So that's THEIKOS yoga.com. And you can find it on there or on my Facebook page, which again is Anna Kerry. You can search for me and find me there.
Brilliant. And I will add the link to your website for people to, you know, with this video, so people can find the information. And thank you so much, Anna. Thank you for sharing your journey. And, you know, as I said, it's very inspirational listening to it and knowing that, you know, what you are sharing, the wisdom of yoga and the yoga practices with the trauma-informed approach, and with your own journey and your own learning through in your life, sharing something very unique and as you said, very much needed out there. So good luck with your course and your project, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to chat to you again.
Thank you.